Hi everybody. As we're reaching the end of the spring season, we get less and less tea now. Well, at least today we didn't source that much tea in order to rest a bit and just enough tea to finish what we planned on making. And so during this chatting session, I would like to talk about elitism in the tea in general and also in the poor tea industry. If you've been drinking tea for a long time, you might have noticed that it's very easy, no matter how much you understand about tea, it's quite easy to be identified as the tea guy or the tea girl, be it at your office or at university or within your family. And a lot of people will assume that you are quite snob about how you drink tea. They would make comments such as, oh, so probably you like tea, so probably for you tea bags are out of the question, things like that. And this question of elitism kept my mind busy for the last 2 days. In a way, I could say that a lot of people who drink tea aren't snob and aren't elitist, but you can still agree when you look at the forums, Facebook groups, that some of them definitely are, or you could say these people take tea drinking seriously, right? Now, first I would like to make a difference, I think, between elitism and snobbery. I think if you consider that there is an elite in the tea, that there are several, that there's a hierarchy of understanding in terms of tea, so there's a kind of, we often talk about the way of tea, and the way of tea presupposes that there is a hierarchy, that some people are further along the road than others. And so if you agree with that, then it would mean that there is indeed an elite in the tea. There's maybe 10 or 5% of people who understand tea the most, who you could define as the elite. Just like, well, if you study science, you could say that having a PhD allows you to claim that you're part of the elite, maybe. Having a Nobel Prize even more, right? Or I don't know, if you're in the army, maybe being a Navy SEALs or a Green Beret allows you to say that you're part of the elite. And I would say that it's acceptable, well, it's up to you, but I think for me it's acceptable that people say they are the best when they really are. I think it's like Mike Tyson, who said once that he was the best fighter in the world and that nobody could beat him. And well, is it really an arrogant attitude? Maybe it is an attitude, but it is still based in fact. Like, if you're the world champion, is it really arrogant to say that you're the best in the world? Now, if you know a lot about tea, is it arrogant to say that just that you know a lot about tea? We often talk about this effect in which people who don't know that much about a subject matter tend to think they know way more than they actually do. And on the opposite, the corollary to this rule is that people who know a lot about the subject assume that the average people know more than they actually do on this subject. I don't know, for example, in my case, maybe I would be mistaken on what percentage of people know what oolong tea is, for example. Maybe I would tend to overestimate the number of people who know what oolong tea is, just because most of the people I meet know what oolong tea is, right? So when you belong to an elite, well, maybe there is also a bias. I guess if you truly belong to an elite, it's harder to notice that you're among the elite. Because let's say you're a scientist and that you hold a PhD degree, then probably a lot of your colleagues also hold one, and you're more likely to be in contact with people who have PhDs than the general public. And so it won't appear that incredible to you to have a PhD. And you could say the same for the army. If you're in a Navy SEALs team, probably you know a lot of other commandos, and it doesn't sound as crazy as it would. So maybe it would be hard for you to realize that you're part of the elite. But when it comes to so I think that there are circumstances when it's right to say that you belong to the elite, because it would be more of an objective statement. Let's say you know more than 99% of the people on a specific subject. Well, you could consider yourself a specialist, I guess. So you would belong to the elite in that prospect. But then you have snobbery, and snobbery, well, the snobs, I would say, are the underdogs. They want to belong to the elite, but they're not quite there yet. So they will look at the real elite and try to imitate them. For example, if I want to belong to the elite in the tea, but I don't really understand tea, maybe I will just try to buy tea or say things that the elite drinks or says. And if you truly belong to the elite, I guess it's easy to tell apart the snobs who want to pretend to belong to that elite, but whose skills are not up to the standard of the elite. But if you're from the general population, in some cases it might be difficult, I think, to tell them apart. And in a way, maybe the snob can give the perception to the general public that he knows more than the true elite. It's like an actor, you know. Back in the day, Socrates argued that actors actually should rule the world because they would act better as doctors, for example, than a real doctor, and act better as a politician, as a real politician. So a good actor should be able to embody, to impersonate any kind of job, any kind of role. And so I don't remember how the argument goes on. I think it's in the Republic of Plato, I think, if I'm not mistaken. And you see here what I'm doing is also a kind of snobbery act, I would say. I started studying philosophy about 2 years ago, I would say. And so I think if you want to share your interest in philosophy, not really teach people, but just show that you know some stuff about philosophy, you should really do a lot of name dropping. You know, learn a few citations, and try to impress people by the books you've read, maybe, or you know, how many citations you can you can speak out from many different philosophers. And yet the thing is, maybe I have read a couple of books about philosophy, but how much have I understood from them? When you know that you can probably do a PhD on any book written by Hegel, by Nietzsche, or other philosophers, you could say that for the general public, including me, like students, I guess reading a book doesn't really prove your competency in the subject, because we don't really know about your level of understanding. And I guess if you truly belong to the elite of philosophers, well, you don't really need to do any name dropping, right? Because your peers will also be part of the elite, and obviously they won't be impressed by your name dropping. And then the real stuff will start, like you will be discussing the arguments. Yeah, you will be mainly discussing arguments. I guess that's more the core of philosophy. So I guess yeah, but when I started reading philosophy, I also have a friend who went on the same way, and I noticed that in the start of our discussions, which can take hours on the phone, at the beginning we'd like to make a lot of name dropping. And you know, like even now, you know, like these days, oh, I've been trying to understand the dialectics of Hegel, transcendental idealism, things like that, and I will talk with him about these concepts. And of course these words are very scary, and the theory are actually extremely complicated, and I have not understood them yet, but I'm working on it. But in the end, well, knowing the name of that, you know, I knew these names last year, or even when I started. It's easy, you go on a Wikipedia page and you will know a lot of names. It would be, in the case of QWERTY, for example, it would be just learning a list of the tea mountains, for example. So, you know, do you know tea from Bayingshan, or tea from Fenghuangwo, or I don't know, tea from Tachisu? And of course, if the guy in front of you doesn't know where Tachisu is, he will feel maybe that you know more than him. Well, actually, this is just name dropping, I guess. Or how many people, for example, buy complicated books with no intent to read them at all, just put it on the bookshelf. And so I guess there is snobbery when there is a need for belonging to a community, right? And you can say even the elite, actually, you can only be part of the elite if there is a community around it. Let's say, for example, that you develop a video game yourself, and that you get really good at this video game, but nobody else is playing the video game. Well, then you can't really say that you're part of an elite. Of course, you will be the world champion of that video game, but an elite, there is a sense of community, I guess. That's one point where, of course, when you go online, when you go to the forums, you're in contact with communities, and some of them might give a vibe of elitism. For example, maybe they wouldn't reply to people who ask very basic questions. Maybe they would have a lot of inside jokes that most people outside the forum wouldn't understand. But they're a community. And actually, what I found out through doing the QWERTY business is that most of my customers do not really take part in the community. You know, they just want to explore and enjoy tea on their own. And therefore, if you do that on your own, then I guess the sense of belonging to an elite falls apart because this knowledge is not intended to be shared with other people. I guess it's just for your own exploration. And so of course you don't want, when you're out of the community, there's no point, no aspiration to belonging to the elite, nor any interest in being snobbish, because anyway, you don't want to talk with other people about your interests. So yeah, so you could say these are like the outsiders, and I think actually it's most of the people who drink pu'er tea. You never hear about them on forums or on Facebook or even on Instagram, actually, including people who really buy a lot of tea and are very knowledgeable. I receive a lot of very interesting and advanced questions on my email. And again, sorry if I take some time to reply. I tend to lag behind on the email replying. And so now, okay, for people who are part of the community, I would, because okay, this thinking started from me seeing some stuff on Instagram about the message basically was tea is for everybody, like pu'er tea is really for everybody. I don't know, no matter who you are, you can enjoy a cup of pu'er tea, you can get passionate about the subject. So it was a very kind of casual message, a very inclusive message, you could say. The message was to bring as many people on the boat as possible. And the thing is, I felt inside me that I profoundly disagreed with that message. No, I think pu'er tea is not for everybody. And I can see it through my customers' profile. I would say in the customers, a lot of people seem to be interested in research. A lot of them are professional researchers or artists, or having kind of intellectual jobs which require some kind of openness to experience. And so I guess, no, I don't see like pu'er tea being something big that everybody will enjoy. I would say it will be just like fine wine or fine whiskey. You will have a small community, and maybe part of that industry, I would say, can open slightly to the mainstream if there are interests in health or fashion. Like we say, it's kind of a hipster thing to drink pu'er tea. But I think the core of the audience will remain very limited. It doesn't mean that it has no potential for growth. I think the potential for growth is huge, because if you take the United States, I think if 0.1% of the population drinks pu'er tea and is interested in pu'er tea, I think that's already an overestimation, right? Now people who are open to new things and want to experiment that kind of good taste, I don't know, maybe it's 5% of the population, or at least I hope so. Now, the main reason why that idea of inclusivity kind of repulsed me, it's because it's kind of a negation of values for me. Well, yeah, it's like saying there is no hierarchy, so there is no tea that's better than another. And if you follow that train of thought, well, you could say the same for music, for example. There is no music that's objectively better than others, and it all depends on your taste. But if you look objectively for sure there are types of music which are harder to get into, both in terms of playing but also in terms of listening. And usually you could say that what characterizes, I think, the fine arts is that they need an education. They need some prior knowledge in order to be able to appreciate this kind of stuff. Why not so many people are into poetry or into kind of classical art, things like that, or even classical music, you know, or jazz. If you look at the Spotify statistics, these musics are not very popular. And I think it's because whatever you say, whatever your ideals about inclusivity, everything being accessible to anybody, I just disagree with that idea. I think some things require a cultural background, and maybe some hobbies require more work, more intellectual work than others. And I think I'm quite confident at this time to say that pu'er tea is really the most complex, the most hardcore kind of tea, and it's not really for anybody, in my opinion. It's for people who are ready to take a deep peek at a subject. And I guess that's why we have a lot of researchers among our customers. It's a matter of openness to experience, personality. Of course, it depends on how you see it. You see it, and maybe you can blame me for trying to intellectualize too much what pu'er tea is. But this is just what I like to do. Yeah, I like to. Maybe I'm a practitioner of intellectual masturbation. I just like that. And sure, like doing the shaching, it can be easier than what I make it sound, but you will find out that there are several layers of understanding, several levels of abstraction, I would say. You can simply teach someone to do it in one day just by telling him what moves to do. But if you really want to understand the shaching, maybe you can think more in terms of energy transfer, like I did a video about the physics of the shaching, and I guess that would be a more satisfying way for the mind to understand the shaching. Now, of course, you don't even need to know that to make good pu'er tea, but why not if you're willing to learn, you know? Now, what I wanted to say again is that the elites can be somehow criticized, because by having an elitist club, of course, you cannot include anybody in that. But on the other hand, as long as anybody can join, if they make that effort, they make that commitment of studying tea, then I guess it's still fair. Just like you wouldn't include anybody in the Navy SEALs, you wouldn't give the Nobel Prize to any basic researcher. These clubs have to, you somehow have to prove something to belong to these clubs. Now the problem is that the elite in tea is not a formal club. You cannot get a PhD in tea drinking, or you cannot join the club of elite tea drinker, although I'm pretty sure it must exist somewhere in the world, possibly in China or Taiwan, I would say. But even though there is not a formal club, I would say that there can be a kind of unspoken rule, like you get a feel, you get a vibe of elitism. And I would say often it's translated by people who have strong opinion on a topic, and they explain it in a way that can sound intimidating for people who are not knowledgeable of that subject. That would come, for example, in poor tea aging, or fermentation, or water quality, things like that, where everybody will try to get to speak out the little bit of science that they have learned. Not really to impress people. I think it's not snobbery in that case, but simply maybe by a willingness to be really helpful. And these people tend to be in the medium, I would say, in the medium ground in the path of tea. They start to understand some things about tea, and maybe they want the world to know it, or they want to make themselves more confident of their knowledge. And I guess only when you keep learning, at some point maybe you just start not caring anymore. Yeah, for example, the brewing technique, like if you go to a tea shop, I'm sure a lot of customers will criticize the brewing parameters that's indicated on the packs. Okay, so the tea shops, they are destined to I would say a rather casual audience, and some people might know more, but not enough to know that you can get much better tea, for example, online. And so they will try to show their knowledge to the tea shop and other people, maybe. But I think it's not a bad thing. I want to conclude, because my tea is getting dry. It's not a bad thing. Actually, I would say that never being elitist at any point might be missing on some parts of what makes our passion for tea. I remember a couple of months ago I was in the little hut saying that yes, sometimes in some circumstances I would even enjoy a tea bag, but it still remains bad tea to me. You can have a good session with the tea, of course. But people who criticize the elitists, who say that everything should be accessible to anybody, well, in the end they don't have any taste at all. Because what can good taste be if there are no hierarchy of the things in life? What can good food be if there's no hierarchy of food? So in terms of tea, for example, I'm gonna tell you an unpopular opinion, and feel free to thumb down the video if you don't like it, but I'm sticking to it anyway. I would say that green tea is vastly inferior to pu'er tea in terms of complexity, in terms of depth, and I would say actually that pu'er tea is the most complex kind of tea, probably along with maybe Japanese green tea. I don't know too much about Japanese green tea, or dansong, dansong and rock teas, which are also a whole world in themselves. Now, yeah, the fact that I tell you this maybe makes me an elitist, because you are drinking a green tea and now you're getting angry at me because I told you that your green tea is not as good as my pu'er tea. But I guess at some point in life you have to assume those positions. If you have no opinion on anything, sure, you won't be called an elitist, but you're kind of saying no to life, actually. Sure, you're like a Buddhist monk. Maybe you have no desire, you have no passion, but, well, at least for me, it's not the way I see life. And I think it would be great to meet an avid green tea drinker and have a serious argument with him or her about how bad their tea tastes actually compared to pu'er tea. And maybe they must try to convince me otherwise, but I think all the fun actually of the tea culture is to have a conflict. Stop talking about harmony when we're in that really to understand the nature of that tea, and to understand the nature of tea we have to discuss things, we have to confront things, and in the end you should have an opinion. I think, do you prefer Jingmai tea or do you prefer Bulangshan tea? I think there's no shame really in having an opinion. Oh, you're going to tell me, oh yeah, but each mountain is very different. You know, it's a bit like art. You cannot really judge things. By doing this, I think you're missing on the passion, the raw passion that takes you in the gut and that makes you want to learn more. Because if everything is the same, then I'd rather have a Lipton tea bag and I'll be very happy with it. Yeah, sure, I'll be happy, but I would be happier with that gushu that I'm frying in the wok. So I think elitists are not to blame. It's just maybe one moment on the path of tea. And right now I would say I don't think I'm too elitist in my attitude, but my path of tea is not over, and maybe in 20 years or 30 years I will be an old grumpy man and saying that tea should be brewed in that way and that you're doing it wrong and that you must learn my method. And I think the kind of people who have these strong opinions are kind of happy actually. They're happy of debating, confronting their opinion, and they thrive in the conflict. And we shouldn't take that joy away from those people. And the camera cut again. Sorry for that. It cuts automatically after half an hour, and I can't really tune it. So it means that I've been doing that chatting for half an hour, which is okay because my wok is not too hot, and I like to bring out that fragrance, amazing fragrance. So I think, yeah, my message is that it's okay, I think, to be an elitist. Try not to be a snob, even though I guess it will happen because it's part of the learning cycle. It's part of the way, actually. And when you meet snobs, well, just be happy for them, I guess. And if you want to make them happier, start to criticize their opinion and have a good argument. And that's why everybody learns, I think, about things. Okay, so that's it. I'm gonna take out my tea. Oh, it's a nice tea. Maybe a little bit dry. I was a bit talkative, but no, it will be fine. Okay, so thank you for watching and see you later. Bye bye.